Chapter 1. The Curtain Rises on Murder. The Grand Étoile Opera House stood as a monument to Parisian grandeur, its golden facade aglow under the starlit sky of July 22nd, 1925. Inside, the foyer buzzed with the elegance of high society, ladies in shimmering gowns, gentlemen in crisp evening suits, and the faint scent of jasmine perfume mingling with the clink of champagne glasses. Hercule Poirot, his meticulous appearance, a testament to his fastidious nature, adjusted his bow tie and surveyed the scene with a discerning eye. His waxed moustache, a perfect curve of pride, twitched slightly, betraying his delight in the opulence surrounding him. The polished marble floor reflected the chandelier's glow, and every gesture, a flutter of a fan, a waiter's nervous glance, caught his attention, filed away in his methodical mind. Poirot had been summoned to this gala performance of Carmen by Madame Geneviève Dubois, the opera house's patroness, and an old friend whose penchant for drama extended beyond the stage. Her invitation had been irresistible. Mon cher Hercule, the Grand Étoile is a world of passion and secrets. You must witness it. Intrigued by the promise of human intrigue, Poirot had accepted, his curiosity as sharp as his patent leather shoes. He had no inkling that the evening's drama would soon turn deadly. Settling into Madame Dubois's private box, Poirot gazed down at the stage, where the crimson curtains parted to reveal the vibrant streets of Seville. The orchestra's notes swelled, discordant at first, then harmonious, as Carmen began. Isabella Moretti, the lead soprano, embodied Carmen with a voice that cut through the air like a velvet blade, commanding every eye and ear. Yet Poirot's attention drifted to a younger performer, Elise Varron, a chorus soprano whose delicate beauty and crystalline voice hinted at a star in the making. Her presence seemed to unsettle Isabella, whose sharp glances toward Elise carried a weight Poirot noted with interest, rivalry perhaps. His little grey cells hummed with possibilities. The performance built to a crescendo, Don José's anguished pleas echoing through the auditorium. As the final note faded, the audience erupted in thunderous applause, the chandeliers trembling with the fervor. Poirot clapped politely, his mind already dissecting the undercurrents he had observed, the subtle tensions, the fleeting expressions that spoke louder than words. But the triumph shattered with a scream from backstage, a jagged sound that sliced through the ovation. Murmurs of confusion replaced cheers, and Poirot rose, his small frame moving with the agility of a man half his age. Madame Dubois, her face pale beneath her powdered makeup, followed, her silk gown whispering urgency. Backstage was a labyrinth of chaos, ropes, pulleys, and trapdoors forming a shadowy world beneath the stage's glamour. Poirot pushed through the crowd of stagehands and chorus members, his presence parting them like a curtain. At the center lay Elise Varron, her fragile form crushed beneath a massive wooden prop, a Spanish tavern from the set, now a grotesque tombstone. Her golden hair fanned across the stone floor, her lifeless eyes staring into eternity, a trickle of blood marring her temple. The prop's weight pinned her, a brutal end to her fleeting stardom. Mon Dieu, Madame Dubois gasped, clutching Poirot Sift's arm. A tragedy, an accident. Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers hovering over the scene, careful not to disturb it. An accident, madame. Perhaps, but Hercule Poirot does not accept the surface without probing its depths. His grey eyes narrowed, tracing the prop's outline and the frayed rope that had held it aloft. The rope's end was not snapped, but sliced clean and deliberate. He stood, dusting his hands. This was no accident, he said softly, his voice a quiet thunder. This was murder. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Monsieur Lefebvre, the stage manager, a wiry man with a perpetually harried air, stepped forward. Monsieur Poirot, surely you jest. The machinery is ancient, the ropes worn. Such mishaps occur in a theatre of this age. Poirot Sift's moustache twitched, a silent rebuke to hasty conclusions. Ancient, Monsieur Lefebvre, but not so careless as to permit a rope to be cut with such precision. This was the work of a deliberate hand, who had access to the understage before the performance. Lefebvre faltered, his eyes darting aside. Many, monsieur, stagehands, prop masters, Performers. The understage is a hive during a production. Then we shall begin with those closest to Mademoiselle Varro, Poirot declared, his tone unyielding yet calm. He turned to Madame Dubois. I require a list of all who were backstage tonight, friends, rivals, admirers. No one escapes the scrutiny of Hercule Poirot. Madame Dubois nodded, her composure steadying. Of course, Hercule. I trust your little grey cells to unravel this horror. Poirot's gaze swept the crowd, cataloguing faces. Isabella Moretti stood rigid, her shock a mask that failed to hide a flicker of something. Relief. Maestro Vincente, the conductor, hovered nearby, his charm tinged with unease. A young stagehand, Pierre, lingered at the edge, his eyes haunted. Poirot's mind whirred, noting the rivalries, the secrets, the motives waiting to be uncovered. He stepped toward the prop, examining the cut rope again. The slice was too clean for chance, the angle suggesting intent. Someone wished Mademoiselle Varron silenced, he murmured to himself. But why? A rival's envy, a lover's scorn, or something deeper hidden in the shadows of this grand stage? Madame Dubois ushered the crowd away, leaving Poirot alone with the body. He studied Elise's serene face, her youth extinguished too soon. A glint caught his eye, a small silver hairpin, half buried in the dust, engraved with a delicate. It was out of place, too fine for a stagehand's toolkit. Poirot pocketed it discreetly, a clue to be pondered later. As he ascended from the understage, the opera house's glamour seemed to dim, its beauty now a facade for treachery. The investigation had begun, and Poirot's little grey cells were alight with purpose. The Grand Étoile held its secrets tightly, but Hercule Poirot was no stranger to unraveling the darkest of mysteries. The curtain had risen on murder, and he would not rest until the final act revealed the truth. Chapter 2. Shadows in the Wings. Hercule Poirot stood in the dimly lit backstage of the Grand Étoile Opera House, the echo of the fatal scream still lingering in his mind like a discordant note. The auditorium's glamour faded here, replaced by a labyrinth of ropes, pulleys, and wooden flats that formed the unseen machinery of the stage. The air was thick with the scent of sawdust and grease paint, and the shadows cast by flickering gaslights danced like spectres across the walls. Poirot's polished shoes clicked softly on the wooden floor as he moved with purpose, his grey eyes scanning every detail, the coiled ropes, the worn planks, the faint smudge of chalk on a trapdoor's edge. Nothing escaped his notice. The tragedy of Elise Varron's death had sent the opera company into disarray, but Poirot's mind was a bastion of order. He had instructed Madame Dubois to keep the cast and crew confined to the theatre until he could begin his interviews. Now, as the clock struck midnight, he stood in the wings, where the stage manager, Monsieur Lefebvre, awaited him, nervously twisting a clipboard in his hands. The man's sallow face glistened with sweat, his eyes darting toward the understage where Elise's body had been found only hours before. Monsieur Lefebvre, Poirot began, his voice calm but commanding. You insist this was an accident, yet the rope that held the fatal prop was cut with precision. Tell me, who was responsible for inspecting the machinery before the performance? Lefebvre's. Adam Sip's apple bobbed. I oversee the checks myself, Monsieur Poirot. But we are understaffed. The ropes are old, the equipment temperamental. A frayed line could snap without warning. Snap, perhaps, Poirot said, his moustache twitching with skepticism, but not slice itself so cleanly. Non, this was no act of chance. You will provide me with the names of all who worked the understage tonight, and I shall speak with them at once. As Lefebvre scribbled names, Poirot's attention shifted to the dressing rooms lining the corridor. A faint light spilled from one, and he approached, finding the door marked with Elise Varron's name in elegant script. Inside, the room was a shrine to the young soprano's ambition. Costumes hung neatly, a mirror framed with photographs of her performances, and a vase of fresh roses, their petals wilting in the stale air. On the dressing table lay a crumpled note, its edges torn as if handled in haste. Poirot unfolded it carefully, revealing a scrawled message. Meet me under the stage. 9 p.m. We must speak. No signature, no clue to the sender's identity, but the hour placed it just before the performance's final act. He pocketed the note, his mind already weaving possibilities. A rendezvous gone wrong? A trap set for the unsuspecting Elise? His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Isabella Moretti, the opera's lead diva, her crimson gown a stark contrast to the drab backstage. Her dark eyes glittered with a mix of grief and defiance, but Poirot noted the tightness of her jaw, the way her fingers clenched her fan. Mademoiselle Moretti. Poirot greeted, bowing slightly. A tragic evening.
You knew Mademoiselle Varron well, I presume?
Isabella sips, lips curled into a faint, bitter smile. Well enough, Monsieur Poirot. Elise was talented, yes, but ambitious. Too ambitious, perhaps. She had a way of stealing the spotlight, even from the chorus. Poirot tilted his head, studying her, and this caused you displeasure. A star such as yourself, mademoiselle, surely has no need to fear a rising talent. Her laugh was sharp, like shattered glass. Fear? No. Annoyance, perhaps. She was always there, fawning over Mastro Vincente, whispering with the stagehands, as if she belonged center stage. But I had no reason to wish her harm. Poirot's eyes gleamed, yet harm found her. Tell me, where were you during the final act, when the prop fell? Isabella hesitated, her fan snapping shut. On stage, of course, I was Carmen. The entire audience saw me, and before the curtain fell. During the interval, perhaps, her gaze flickered, a shadow of unease crossing her face. I was in my dressing room, preparing alone. Poirot nodded, filing away her words. Merci, mademoiselle. We shall speak again. As Isabella swept away, Poirot turned to the understage entrance, a narrow staircase descending into darkness. He navigated the steps with care, his cane tapping lightly. The understage was a cavernous maze, its air cool and damp, filled with the creak of machinery and the faint hum of distant pipes. Here the prop had fallen, crushing Elise beneath its weight. Poirot examined the area, noting the chalk marks where her body had lain, now cleared by the gendarmes. The rope, still dangling from the pulley, bore its telltale cut, and nearby, a smudge of grease on a lever caught his eye. It was fresh, unlike the dust-coated machinery around it. A noise, a soft shuffle drew his attention. He turned to see Pierre, the young stagehand, lurking near a trapdoor. His face was pale, his hands stuffed into his pockets. Monsieur Poirot, he stammered. I was just checking the rigging. We can have another accident. Indeed, Poirot said, his tone mild but piercing. You were close to Mademoiselle Varron, were you not? I am told you often assisted her with her props. Pierre Sept's eyes widened. We spoke, yes. She was kind, not like some of the others, but I didn't sept. I wasn't sept here when it happened. Poirot stepped closer, his gaze unyielding. And yet you are here now in the shadows, where a young woman met her end. Tell me, Pierre, what did Elise confide in you? Did she speak of enemies? Of fears? Pierre's shoulders slumped, but he shook his head. She was nervous before the performance, said someone was watching her. I thought she was just tired. Overworked. I didn't think. Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. What you thought, monsieur, may be less important than what you saw. You will tell me everything, in time. As Pierre retreated, Poirot's gaze lingered on the trapdoor. A faint scratch mark marred its edge, as if something had been dragged across it. He knelt, his fingers brushing the wood, and found a single pearl bead, its luster dulled by dust. It matched the costume Elise had worn as a chorus girl. Another clue, another thread in the tapestry of murder. Returning to the wings, Poirot felt the weight of the opera house's secrets pressing around him. The rivalries, the whispered alliances, the hidden motives, all swirled like the notes of Carmen's fatal dance. Elise Varron had been no mere chorus girl. She had been a spark in a powder keg of ambition and envy. As he ascended to the auditorium, the faint echo of a soprano's aria haunted the air, a reminder that the stage was set for more than music. The killer was still here, watching, waiting. And Hercule Poirot would find them. Chapter 3. The Phantom of the Understage. The Grand Étoile Opera House seemed to breathe with secrets. Its understage, a shadowy realm where the glamour of the auditorium gave way to a labyrinth of iron and wood. Hercule Poirot descended the narrow staircase, his cane tapping rhythmically, each step echoing in the cavernous space. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of oil and dust, and the faint groan of machinery whispered of the theatre's hidden life. Gaslights flickered, casting long shadows that danced across the walls like spectres. Poirot's grey eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned the understage, noting the pulleys, the trapdoors, the coiled ropes that had played their part in Elise Varron's tragic end. Here, beneath the stage, the truth lay buried, and Poirot was determined to unearth it. The memory of Elise's crumpled body haunted him, but his mind remained a fortress of logic. The cut rope, the grease smudge on the lever, the pearl bead, they were pieces of a puzzle, and Poirot detested an incomplete picture. He had sent Monsieur Lefebvre to gather the stage hands for questioning, but first he wished to explore this subterranean world where the opera's illusions were born, and it seemed where murder had been staged. As he moved deeper, a soft voice broke the silence. A trembling whisper from a young chorus girl, Marie, who stood clutching a shawl near a cluster of sandbags. Her wide eyes darted nervously, as if expecting the shadows to move. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice barely audible, "you shouldn't be down here alone. It's not safe." Poirot tilted his head, his moustache twitching with curiosity. "Not safe, mademoiselle? And why is that? Is it the machinery or something? Someone else?" Marie hesitated, her fingers twisting the shawl's fringe. "They say the opera house is haunted. The phantom of the understage. I saw him, monsieur, last night before the performance, a cloaked figure, moving near the machinery where Elise—" Her voice broke, and she crossed herself. "I thought it was a trick of the light, but now, with Elise gone—" Poirot's expression remained impassive, though his mind whirred. A phantom? Non. Hercule Poirot did not believe in ghosts, but he believed in human cunning. A cloaked figure suggested a disguise, a deliberate attempt to instill fear or deflect suspicion. "Describe this phantom, mademoiselle," he said gently. "Every detail, if you please." Marie swallowed. Tall, shrouded in a dark cloak, moving quickly. I couldn't see his face. "It was near the main pulley just before the final act. I told Elise, but she laughed, said it was probably Pierre playing a prank." Pierre, the stagehand. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The young man's haunted demeanor and proximity to the crime scene had already piqued his interest. "Merci, mademoiselle, you have been most helpful. Now return to the others, and speak of this to no one." As Marie scurried away, Poirot approached the main pulley, a massive iron contraption that controlled the heavy scenery. The rope that had held the fatal prop hung limply, its severed end a silent accusation. He examined it closely, noting the clean cut once more, but now his attention was drawn to the pulley itself. A faint scratch marred its surface, as if a tool had been used to tamper with its mechanism. Nearby, a smear of black paint, fresh, not yet dried, stained the floor. It was out of place in the dust-covered understage, a clue that someone had been here recently, perhaps to cover their tracks. Poirot knelt, his gloved fingers brushing the paint. It was still tacky, suggesting it had been applied within the last day. He followed the trail to a nearby trapdoor, its hinges oiled and silent, unlike the creaking machinery around it. Opening it revealed a narrow tunnel, barely wide enough for a man to pass through. The air within was cooler, carrying a faint metallic tang. Poirot hesitated, his fastidious nature recoiling at the thought of dust on his suit, but his curiosity propelled him forward. He descended, his cane tapping the stone floor. The tunnel led to a small chamber, cluttered with discarded props, a broken chair, a cracked mirror, a pile of tattered costumes. Among them, Poirot found a cloak, dark and heavy, folded carefully beneath a crate. He lifted it, noting its coarse fabric and the faint scent of tobacco clinging to it. No phantom wore this, he thought, but a man or woman with a purpose, Tucked inside the cloak's folds was a small brass key, its surface etched with a delicate G, A, the initials of the Grande Étoile. Another clue, but to what lock? Emerging from the tunnel, Poirot was met by Pierre, the stagehand, whose sudden appearance startled even the unflappable detective. Pierre's hands were smudged with grease, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and defiance. "Monsieur Poirot, you shouldn't be poking around down here," he said, his voice unsteady. "It's dangerous. The machinery. Dangerous indeed." Poirot interrupted, his tone sharp. "But not for the reasons you suggest, Monsieur Pierre. You know this understage better than most, do you not? Tell me, what is the purpose of this key?" He held up the brass object, watching Pierre's face closely. The young man paled, his hands clenching. "I've never seen it before. There are dozens of keys in this place. Props, storage, dressing rooms. It could be anything." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Or it could be everything. You were close to Mademoiselle Varenne. Yes. She confided in you, perhaps about a cloaked figure, a secret meeting." Pierre Sep's jaw tightened. "She was kind to me, that Sep's all. She didn't Sep's deserve this. If you search looking for someone to blame, talk to Isabella or Maestro Vincente. They search the ones with tempers and grudges." Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "I shall speak to all in time, but you, monsieur, must be truthful. The shadows of this understage hide more than machinery, and I shall uncover what they conceal." As Pierre retreated, Poirot returned to the pulley, his mind piecing together the fragments. The cloaked figure, the tampered pulley, the key, the paint, all pointed to a calculated act, not a spectral one. The legend of the phantom of the understage was a convenient distraction, but Poirot saw through it. Someone had used the opera house's myths to mask their crime, and Elise had paid the price. He ascended to the back stage, where the cast and crew awaited, their faces a gallery of suspicion and fear. The opera house's grandeur was a facade, its understage a stage of its own, where jealousy, ambition, and betrayal played their parts. Poirot's little grey cells buzzed with purpose. The phantom was no ghost, but a killer in flesh and blood, and he would not rest until the curtain fell on their deception. Chapter 4. A discordant aria. The rehearsal hall of the Grande Étoile Opera House thrummed with the vibrant notes of a morning practice, the air alive with the soaring voice of Isabella Moretti. Hercule Poirot sat in the shadows of the auditorium, his polished cane resting across his knees, his grey eyes fixed on the stage. Isabella, resplendent in a rehearsal gown of deep sapphire, sang an aria from Tosca, her voice a cascade of passion and power. Yet beneath the artistry, Poirot detected a tremor, an edge of unease that betrayed more than stage nerves. The death of Elise Varenne had cast a pall over the opera house, and Isabella's performance, though flawless to the untrained ear, carried a discordant note to Poirot's discerning mind. The hall was sparsely populated, with only a few musicians and stagehands present, their faces weary from the previous night's tragedy. Poirot had come to observe, to study the dynamics among the company, for he knew that murder often left ripples in the behavior of those touched by it. His friend, Captain Hastings, newly arrived from London, sat beside him, his earnest face creased with concern. "I say, Poirot," Hastings whispered, "this place feels like a powder keg. Everyone's on edge, and that Moretti woman, she's a force, isn't she?" "Indeed, mon ami," Poirot murmured, his moustache twitching. "But a force driven by what? Passion. Yes, but also perhaps by fear or guilt. Observe her closely, Hastings. The eyes, they reveal what the voice conceals." As the aria reached its climax, Isabella's gaze darted to the wings, where Maestro Vincente, the opera's conductor, stood with his baton poised. His angular face was taut, his dark eyes locked on Isabella with an intensity that spoke of more than professional admiration. Poirot noted the exchange, filing it away with the precision of a librarian. The rehearsal ended, and Isabella descended from the stage, her movements graceful but her expression guarded as she approached the detective. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice cool, "you are persistent. Have you come to accuse me again, or do you simply enjoy my singing?" Poirot rose, bowing slightly. "Your talent, Mademoiselle Moretti, is undeniable, but Hercule Poirot is here not for music, but for truth. You spoke of Mademoiselle Veronsette's ambition yesterday. Tell me, did it threaten you so much that you wished her gone?" Isabella Sepp's eyes flashed, her fan snapping open with a flick of her wrist. "You are bold, monsieur. Elise was a chorus girl, nothing more. Her dreams of stardom were delusions. I had no reason to fear her." "Yet fear is not the only motive for murder," Poirot said softly. "Jealousy, perhaps, or love. I am told you and Mademoiselle Varot shared an interest in Maestro Vincente." Her cheeks flushed, but she held his gaze. "Vincente is a genius, and geniuses attract admiration. Elise was a child, throwing herself at him. If anything, I pitied her." Poirot Sip's smile was enigmatic. "Pity, mademoiselle, can mask darker emotions. Where were you during the interval before the final act of Carmen?" "Your dressing room, you said. But can anyone confirm this?" Isabella hesitated, her fan pausing mid-motion. "I was alone, as I told you. Preparing for the finale requires focus. Surely you don't suspect me of crawling through the understage to cut ropes?" Poirot Sip's eyes gleamed. "What I suspect, mademoiselle, is that the truth is a melody yet to be sung. Merci for your time." As Isabella swept away, Hastings leaned in. "She's sussed, hiding something, Poirot." That pause. She wasn't sussed sure of her own story. "Precisement, Hastings," Poirot replied, tapping his cane. "The diva sings beautifully, but her notes are not in harmony with the facts. Come, let us explore further." They moved backstage, where the crew was resetting props for the next rehearsal. Poirot's attention was drawn to a pile of costumes near the understage entrance, where a torn piece of fabric caught his eye, a scrap of crimson silk, identical to the gown Elise had worn in Carmen. He lifted it carefully, noting a faint stain that could be blood, though too faint to be certain. The tear was jagged, suggesting a struggle. "Hastings," he said, "this was no accident of wardrobe. Someone tore this from Mademoiselle Varon, perhaps in a moment of violence." Hastings frowned. "But how did it end up here? The body was found below, not in the wings." "A question for the little grey cells," Poirot mused. He pocketed the fabric, adding it to his growing collection of clues: the hairpin, the cryptic note, the brass key. Each was a thread in the tapestry of murder, and Poirot was determined to weave them together. Their investigation was interrupted by the arrival of Monsieur Lefebvre, the stage manager, his clipboard clutched like a shield. "Monsieur Poirot, the crew is restless. They scepter saying the phantom did this, cut the rope, killed Elise. Superstition is spreading like wildfire." Poirot Sip's moustache twitched with disdain. "Superstition, Monsieur Lefebvre, is the refuge of those who fear the truth. But I shall speak with your crew. Bring me the prop master, Monsieur Dubois." Dubois, a burly man with calloused hands and a permanent scowl, appeared moments later. His eyes darted nervously as Poirot questioned him about the understage machinery. "I checked the ropes myself that morning," Dubois insisted. "Everything was in order. If someone tampered with them, it was after my shift." "And who was in the understage during the performance?" Poirot pressed. Dubois shrugged. "Stage hands, mostly. Pierre was down there, adjusting the trapdoors, and I saw Isabella near the entrance, though she had no business there." Poirot Sip's eyes narrowed. "Mademoiselle Moretti in the understage, you are certain?" "She was checking her props," she said. "But it was odd. She sits never bothered with that before." As Dubois retreated, Hastings whispered, "Isabella lied about being in her dressing room, then. She's sets involved, Poirot. Is it bet my hat on it?" "Patience, mon ami," Poirot said. "The truth is a delicate score, and we have only begun to read its notes. Isabella Septa's presence in the understage is a clue, but not a verdict. We must also consider Maestro Vincente, whose admiration for both sopranos may have sparked more than music." The rehearsal hall grew quiet as the musicians packed their instruments, but the air buzzed with tension. Poirot's gaze lingered on the stage, where the ghost light, A single bulb illuminating the empty boards cast an eerie glow. The opera house was a stage not only for art but for human passions, and Elise Varron's death was the tragic climax of a drama yet to be unveiled. As Poirot and Hastings left the hall, the detective's mind hummed with possibilities, each clue a note in the discordant aria of murder. The killer was close, their motives hidden in the shadows of rivalry and desire, but Hercule Poirot would bring them into the light. Chapter 5. The Masked Benefactor. The Grand Étoile Opera House, with its gilded arches and velvet drapes, held an air of mystery that extended beyond its stage. Hercule Poirot, his polished cane tapping softly on the parquet floor, navigated the opulent corridors toward the private office of Madame Dubois, the patroness. The morning light filtered through stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscopic patterns that belied the dark secrets Poirot sought to uncover. Elise Varro's murder had shaken the opera house, and Poirot's little grey cells were alight with the threads of motive and opportunity. Today he aimed to meet the elusive Monsieur Duval, the theatre's wealthy benefactor whose influence loomed large over the Grand Étoile, and perhaps over Elise's fate. Captain Hastings trailed behind, his earnest curiosity a contrast to Poirot's measured calm. "This Duval fellow sounds like a shadowy figure," Poirot, Hastings remarked, adjusting his hat. "Always in his private box, never mingling with the crowd. Why does he keep such a low profile?" "Précisément, mon ami," Poirot replied, his moustache twitching. "Those who hide in the shadows often have much to conceal. Monsieur Duval Sep's generosity funds this opera, but generosity can mask other intentions. We shall see what lies behind his mask." Madame Dubois greeted them in her office, a room adorned with portraits of past divas and gilded frames. Her composure was regal, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. "Hercule, you wished to meet Monsieur Duval. He is a private man, but I have persuaded him to speak with you. He is waiting in the patron's lounge." The lounge was a haven of luxury, its walls lined with crimson silk, and its chandelier casting a warm glow. Monsieur Duval stood by a window, his tall frame clad in a tailored black suit, his face half-turned to conceal a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. His presence was commanding, yet his eyes, sharp and guarded, suggested a man accustomed to control. Poirot noted the details, the gold cufflinks engraved with G-Shay, the faint tremor in his hand as he set down his glass of cognac. "Monsieur Duval," Poirot began, bowing slightly, "Hercule Poirot is grateful for your time. The tragedy of Mademoiselle Varron has cast a shadow over your magnificent opera house. I understand you were her patron, perhaps even her mentor." Duval Sep's lips curved into a thin smile. "Elise was a rare talent, Monsieur Poirot. I supported her rise as I do many young artists. Her death is a loss to the arts, nothing more." Poirot Sep's eyes gleamed. "Nothing more? Yet rumors suggest a closer connection, admiration perhaps of a personal nature." Duval Sep's expression hardened. "Gossip is the currency of the theatre, monsieur. I admired Elise Sep's voice, not her heart. My interests are in the opera Sep's success, not scandal." "And yet," Poirot pressed, "success often comes with a price. I have learned of payments, irregular, substantial, linked to Mademoiselle Varron, payments recorded in the opera Sep's ledger, marked only with initials. Fucci perhaps." Duval Sep's hand tightened around his glass, but his voice remained steady. "The ledger records my contributions to the company, nothing more. Elias received a stipend, as do others. If you seek scandal, look to the performers, their jealousies, their rivalries." Poirot nodded, his smile enigmatic. "Jealousy, oui, is a potent motive, but so is secrecy. You were in your box during Carmen Sep's final act, were you not? Did you see anything unusual?" "I saw the performance," Duval replied curtly. "Nothing else." As Poirot thanked him and withdrew, Hastings whispered, "He Sep's hiding something, Poirot. That scar, that guarded tone. He Sep's no innocent philanthropist." "Indeed, Hastings," Poirot murmured. "But what does he protect? His reputation, or something darker? They returned to Madame Dubois' office where Poirot requested access to the financial ledger. She hesitated, her fingers brushing a pearl necklace, but complied, producing a leather-bound book. Poirot's keen eyes scanned the pages, noting entries marked GD, sums far exceeding typical stipends, dated irregularly with one payment made the day before Elise's death. Beside it, a cryptic note: for EV, discretion, assured, blackmail, bribery. Poirot's mind raced with possibilities. Leaving the office, they ventured backstage, where the crew prepared for the evening's rehearsal. Poirot's thoughts returned to the clues: the cut rope, the torn silk, the brass key with Guerre etched upon it. He suspected the key might unlock something tied to Duval's payments, perhaps a private box or a hidden compartment. His attention was drawn to a stagehand, Pierre, who lingered near the costume racks, his eyes darting nervously. Poirot approached, his voice soft but piercing. "Monsieur Pierre, you knew Mademoiselle Varron well. Did she ever speak of Monsieur Duval? Of money, perhaps, or secrets?" Paul Fierce's hands shook, smudged with grease. "She mentioned him once, said he was kind but strange, always watching her, sending her gifts, roses, jewelry. She didn't set like it, but she needed his support." "And did she fear him?" Poirot asked. Pierre hesitated. Not fear exactly, but she said he knew things about her past, about others in the company. She was careful around him. Poirot's moustache twitched. Careful, yet not careful enough. "Merci, monsieur." As Pierre retreated, Hastings frowned. "Duval Sipt's got a hold over this place." "Hasn't Sipt, he. Those payments could Elise have been blackmailing him." "Possible, mon ami," Poirot said. "But blackmail is a dangerous dance, and Elise was no fool. Perhaps she was a pawn in a larger game. We must learn more of Duval Sipt's influence and his enemies." The day wore on, and Poirot's investigation deepened. He observed the cast, noting Isabella Moretti's icy glances toward the patron's box, Maestro Vincente's tense exchanges with the stage manager, and the whispers among the chorus about Duval's special interest in Elise. The opera house was a web of alliances and betrayals, and Duval's wealth was its center. Poirot's mind wove the clues together: the key, the ledger, the torn silk, each a note in the symphony of murder. As evening fell, the auditorium glowed with the promise of another performance, but Poirot felt the weight of unseen eyes. Someone was watching, guarding their secrets as fiercely as Duval guarded his. The masked benefactor was no phantom, but a man of flesh and blood, and Poirot would unmask him, note by note, until the truth sang clear. Chapter 6. Echoes of a Past Performance. The Grand Étoile Opera House, with its opulent facade and shadowed understage, seemed to hold time itself within its walls, each creak and whisper a reminder of performances past. Hercule Poirot, his meticulous mind attuned to the subtlest clues, felt the weight of history as he entered the theatre's archives, a dusty room tucked behind the rehearsal hall. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and leather, and shelves groaned under the weight of old programs, letters, and photographs. Poirot's investigation into Elise Varron's murder had uncovered threads of rivalry and secrecy, but a chance remark from a chorus girl about a similar tragedy years ago had sparked his curiosity. The past, he suspected, held a key to the present. Captain Hastings followed, his brow furrowed with skepticism. "I say," Poirot, digging through old records, "seems a bit of a stretch to connect some dusty scandal to Elise's death." Poirot's moustache twitched, a glint of amusement in his grey eyes. "Mon ami, the past is never truly silent. It whispers in the present, and Hercule Poirot listens. If Elise Sipt's death echoes an earlier tragedy, we must uncover the melody of that echo." The archivist, Madame Leclerc, an elderly woman with wire-rimmed glasses and a stoop that spoke of decades bent over manuscripts, greeted them with a wary nod. Her hands, gnarled but steady, pulled a ledger from a shelf. "You're asking about the incident of 15, Monsieur Poirot. A dark time for the Grand Étoile. A young mezzo-soprano, Claire Moreau, died during a performance of Faust. A chandelier fell, they said. An accident, but there were whispers of foul play. Poirot leaned forward, his cane resting lightly on the floor. "Whispers, madame? Of what nature?" Madame Leclerc's eyes darted to the door, as if expecting an eavesdropper. Claire was beloved, but ambitious. She'd caught the eye of the director, Monsieur Beaumont. Some said they were lovers, others that she'd uncovered his secrets, financial misdeeds, perhaps. After her death, a jewel, a sapphire brooch, went missing from her dressing room. Beaumont left the opera soon after, disgraced. Poirot Sifter's mind whirred, noting the parallels. Another young singer, another sudden death, another hint of scandal. "This brooch, madame, was it ever found?" She shook her head. "No, but rumors said it was cursed, tied to the opera Sipt's fortunes. Claire Sipt's death marked a decline, fewer patrons, fewer performances, until Monsieur Duval arrived, with his wealth to revive us." Poirot Sipt's eyes narrowed at the mention of Duval. The benefactor Sipt's shadow loomed larger with each clue. And were there others involved? A stagehand, perhaps, or a performer who might still be here? Madame Leclerc hesitated, then pointed to a faded photograph on the wall, a group of stagehands from 1915, their faces stern. One, a young man with sharp features and haunted eyes, bore a striking resemblance to Pierre, the current stagehand. "That's Jacques, Pierre's father," she said. "He was here then, left after the tragedy. Pierre joined us a few years ago, quiet but clever with the machinery." Hastings raised an eyebrow. Pierre Sep's father. Could he be connected to Elise Sep's death, carrying some old grudge? "Perhaps, Hastings," Poirot murmured, studying the photograph. The sins of the past often cast long shadows. "Madam, may I see the programs and letters from that season?" Madame Leclerc produced a box of documents, and Poirot set to work, his gloved fingers turning brittle pages with care. A program from Faust listed Claire Moreau as the understudy for Marguerite, poised for stardom before her death. A letter, tucked inside, caught his eye, unsigned but written in a flowing hand. "Leave the brooch, or the truth will ruin you." The threat was clear, but to whom was it addressed? Beaumont, or another? Poirot Sip's thoughts were interrupted by a faint noise, a creak from the corridor. He glanced at Hastings, who nodded and stepped to the door, finding it empty. "Someone Sip's watching us, Poirot." Hastings whispered, "This place is full of ghosts." "Not ghosts, mon ami, but those who fear the light of truth," Poirot replied. He pocketed a copy of the letter, its words a mirror to the cryptic note found in Elise's dressing room. The parallels were too precise to be coincidence. Had Elise uncovered a similar secret, perhaps tied to Duval's payments or the opera's shadowed past? They left the archives, descending to the backstage, where rehearsals continued under a cloud of tension. Poirot sought out Pierre, finding him adjusting a pulley near the understage. The young man's hands trembled slightly, his eyes avoiding Poirot's gaze. "Monsieur Pierre," Poirot began, his voice soft but piercing, "your father worked here during the tragedy of Claire Moreau. Did he ever speak of it? Of a missing jewel, perhaps, or a director's disgrace?" Pierre Sept's face paled, his wrench slipping. "My father didn't Sept talk much about those days. He said the opera house was cursed. That's Sept's all. I don't Sept's know anything about jewels or murders." Poirot Sept's moustache twitched. "Yet you know the understage as he did, its secrets, its hiding places. Elise trusted you, did she not? Did she speak of a brooch, or of Monsieur Duval Sept's interest in her?" Pierre Sept's jaw tightened. "She mentioned Duval once. Said he asked her to keep something safe, a small box, locked. She didn't Sept like it. Said, it felt wrong, but Sept's all I know." Poirot nodded, filing away the detail. A locked box perhaps tied to the brass key with gates etched upon it. The clues, the torn silk, the key, the ledger's cryptic payments, were weaving a pattern, one that echoed the tragedy of a decade past. He thanked Pierre and moved on, his mind racing. As they returned to the auditorium, the ghost light cast its eerie glow across the empty stage. The opera house was a palimpsest, its past tragedies bleeding into the present. Elise's death was no isolated act, but a note in a larger score, one of greed, betrayal, and secrets buried deep. Poirot's little grey cells hummed with purpose. The echoes of Claire Moreau's death were growing louder, and he would follow them to the heart of the mystery, where the truth awaited its final blow. Chapter 7. The Trapdoor Sept Secret. The understage of the Grand Étoile Opera House was a world apart from its gilded auditorium, a shadowy maze of iron pulleys, wooden beams and coiled ropes that creaked like the bones of some ancient beast. Hercule Poirot descended the narrow staircase, his polished cane tapping with deliberate precision, each step a measured advance into the heart of the mystery. The air was cool and damp, tinged with the metallic tang of machinery and the faint echo of Elise Varron's final scream. Poirot's grey eyes, sharp as a blade, scanned the dimly lit expanse, noting the dust undisturbed, except for faint footprints leading to a trapdoor near the fatal pulley. The cut rope, the torn silk, the cryptic payments, all pointed to this subterranean realm, and Poirot was determined to uncover its secrets. Captain Hastings followed, his face pale in the flickering gaslight. "This place gives me the creeps, Poirot," he muttered, glancing at the shadows. "It sets like a tomb down here. Are you sure we should be poking around alone?" "Mon ami," Poirot replied, his moustache twitching with a hint of amusement. "A tomb it may seem, but tombs hold secrets, and Hercule Poirot is no stranger to unearthing them. The trapdoor, Hastings, observe its hinges. They are oiled, unlike the rusted machinery around us. Someone has used it recently." Poirot knelt beside the trapdoor, his gloved fingers tracing its edge. The wood was scarred with fresh scratches, as if something heavy had been dragged across it. With a gentle tug, he lifted the trapdoor, revealing a narrow shaft descending into darkness. A faint glint caught his eye, a blood-stained glove, wedged between the trapdoor's frame and a rusted bolt. He retrieved it carefully, noting its fine leather and masculine size too large for Elise's delicate hands. Tucked beside it was a small brass key, identical to the one he had found in the cloaked figure's hiding place, etched with gay English, the initials of the Grand Étoile. "Hastings," Poirot said, holding up the glove. "This is no stagehand Sibs, garb. It belongs to someone of refinement, perhaps a performer or a patron. And this key, its twin suggests a lock of great importance. We must find what it opens." Hastings frowned, peering into the shaft. Could it be Duval Sips? He and Sips got those fancy cufflinks with the same initials. Maybe he dropped the glove during whatever happened down here. Possible, but not certain, Poirot mused. The glove is stained with blood, but whose? Elise Set's or another Set's? We shall have it examined. For now, let us explore further. He descended the shaft, his movements cautious, but assured. The passage led to a small chamber, cluttered with discarded props and crates, much like the one he had found earlier. But here, a faint draught carried the scent of tobacco and something sharper, gunpowder perhaps. Poirot's eyes narrowed as he spotted a loose floorboard, slightly ajar. Lifting it revealed a hidden compartment, empty save for a single scrap of paper with a scrawled number. Box 12. A private box in the auditorium, perhaps. The key burned in his pocket, a clue to a lock yet to be found. As he emerged, a sudden crash echoed through the understage, followed by a groan of shifting wood. Poirot spun, his cane raised, just as a heavy flat, a piece of scenery, teetered above him, its ropes fraying with unnatural speed. Hastings lunged, pulling Poirot's back as the flat crashed to the floor, splintering inches from where he had stood. Dust billowed, and Poirot coughed, his composure momentarily shaken. "Good heavens, Poirot!" Hastings exclaimed, his face ashen. "That was no accident. Someone sits trying to stop you." "Indeed, mon ami," Poirot said, brushing dust from his suit with a grimace. "The killer watches us, and they grow reckless. This flat was tampered with, just as the prop that killed Elise. Observe the rope. Another clean cut." He examined the fallen flat, noting the fresh slice in its rigging. The sabotage was deliberate, a warning or an attempt to silence him. Poirot's mind raced, connecting the glove, the key, and the number to the web of motives. Duval's payments, Isabella's jealousy, Pierre's secrets. Someone in the opera house was desperate to protect their truth. Poirot sought out the prop master, Monsieur Dubois, who was supervising the crew nearby. Dubois's burly frame and perpetual scowl made him an imposing figure, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of fear as Poirot approached. "Monsieur Dubois," Poirot began, his voice soft but unyielding. "This flat nearly crushed me. You are responsible for the scenery, are you not? How do you explain another cut rope?" Dubois' Sceptre's hands clenched, his knuckles whitening. "I don't know, Monsieur Poirot. I checked everything this morning. If someone tampered with it, it wasn't Sceptre and my watch." "And yet," Poirot said, holding up the blood-stained glove, "this was found near the trapdoor, close to where Elise died. It is not yours, I presume." Dubois' face reddened. "Never seen it. Could belong to anyone, performers, stagehands, even that fancy Dubois. They all come through here." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Monsieur Duval, you say? Interesting. And what of box 12? Does it hold significance?" Dubois hesitated, his scowl deepening. "It sets a private box reserved for patrons. Dubois uses it sometimes. Locked tight, always. You were set need a key." Poirot nodded, the pieces of the puzzle shifting in his mind. "Merci, monsieur. You have been most illuminating." As Dubois retreated, Hastings whispered, "That glove. It sets too fine for a stagehand like Dubois. And box 12. Could it be where Elise was meeting someone, like the note said?" "Précisément, Hastings," Poirot replied. "The key, the glove, the box, they are notes in the same deadly score. Elise uncovered something, perhaps, in that box. That cost her life. We must find it before the killer strikes again." The understage grew quiet as the crew dispersed, but the air thrummed with tension. Poirot's gaze lingered on the trapdoor, its secrets only half revealed. The opera house was a stage of deception, its players hiding behind masks of ambition and fear. The blood-stained glove, the brass key, the number 12, they were clues to a truth buried deep, and Poirot would dig until he found it. As he ascended to the auditorium, the faint echo of a distant aria haunted the air, a reminder that the killer was near, their next move as calculated as the fall of a prop. Chapter 8. A Duet of Deception. The Grand Étoile Opera House buzzed with the subdued energy of a morning rehearsal, the auditorium half lit as the orchestra tuned their instruments in a discordant hum. Hercule Poirot stood in the wings, his sharp grey eyes fixed on Maestro Vincente, the opera's charismatic conductor, whose baton sliced through the air with the precision of a fencer. Vincente's angular face, framed by dark curls, radiated charm, but Poirot detected a tension beneath the surface, a flicker of unease in his movements, a shadow in his gaze. The murder of Elise Varogin had cast a pall over the company, and Poirot's investigation was tightening the strings of suspicion. Today he sought to unravel the maestro's role in the deadly drama, for the clues, the cut rope, the blood-stained glove, the cryptic note, pointed to a web of passion and betrayal. Captain Hastings stood beside him, his notebook open, scribbling observations. "Vincente Set's got a way about him, Poirot," Hastings whispered. "All charm and smiles. But I set's wager he set's hiding something. Those rumors about him and Elise, do you think there set's truth to them?" "Mon ami," Poirot replied, his mustache twitching. "Charm is a mask, and Hercule Poirot sees through masks. The maestro Set's heart may sing for more than music. Let us test his melody." As the rehearsal paused, Poirot approached Vincente, who was wiping sweat from his brow with a silk handkerchief. "Maestro," Poirot began, bowing slightly, "your talent brings life to this opera house, but I seek the truth behind a death. Mademoiselle Varogin was your protégée, was she not? A voice you nurtured, perhaps with more than professional interest." Vincente Set's dark eyes flashed, but his smile remained. "Monsieur Poirot, you cut to the heart of things. Elise was a rare talent, yes, and I guided her as I do all my singers, but my interest was purely artistic. She had potential to rival Isabella, though she lacked discipline. Poirot's gaze sharpened. And this potential, did it provoke envy? I am told you and Mademoiselle Moretti are close. Did Elise Sip's rise threaten that harmony? Vincente's smile faltered, his hand tightening on the baton. Isabella is my muse. My Carmen. Elisa's was a distraction, nothing more. If you're suggesting I had a hand in her death, you're mistaken. I was on the podium during the final act, conducting the orchestra. The entire auditorium can attest to that. Indeed, Poirot said softly. But the interval before the final act, Maestro, where were you then? A witness claims to have heard an argument, heated and passionate, between you and Elise. Vincente's face darkened, his charm giving way to a flicker of anger. A witness. Gossip, Monsieur Poirot? Yes, Elise and I spoke during the interval. She was upset, talking nonsense about someone threatening her. I told her to focus on her performance. Nothing more. Poirot tilted his head, his eyes gleaming. Threats, Maestro. And did she name this someone? Or perhaps she spoke of a locked box or a key marked T. A key, A-T. Vincente's jaw tightened, but he shook his head. She said nothing of keys or boxes. She was nervous, that sent us all. I dismissed it as stage fright. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. Merci, Maestro. Your candor is noted. We shall speak again. As Vincente returned to the orchestra, Hastings whispered, He sums lying, Poirot, that hesitation. He knows more than he sums letting on, and that argument. Sounds like more than stage fright to me. Precisement, Hastings, Poirot replied, tapping his cane. The maestro plays a duet of deception, but with whom? Elise, Isabella, or another? We must find the score of their secrets. Poirot's investigation led them to the conductor's office, a small room cluttered with sheet music and framed posters of past triumphs. On the desk lay a stack of letters, one catching Poirot's eye, a love letter written in a flowing hand, addressed to Isabella. My heart sings only for you, it read, signed with a flourish. The ink was fresh, the paper scented with lavender. Poirot's mind whirred, connecting the letter to the romantic triangle hinted at by Isabella's jealousy and Vincente's evasive answers. As they left the office, Poirot spotted a young violinist, Mademoiselle Claire, lingering nearby, her bow trembling in her hand. Her eyes were red as if she had been crying. Poirot approached, his voice gentle. Mademoiselle, you seem distressed. Did you know Mademoiselle Varron well? Claire nodded, her voice barely a whisper. She was kind to me, unlike some. I heard her arguing with Maestro Vincente during the interval near the understage. She was shouting about a secret, something she couldn't send Teep any more. He told her to be quiet, said it would ruin everything. Poirot's moustache twitched. A secret, mademoiselle? Did she say more? Claire shook her head. I didn't hear the rest. I was too scared to stay, but Elise looked frightened, not like herself. Merci, mademoiselle, Poirot said, his mind racing. A secret, a heated argument, a love letter. The threads were tightening around Vincente, but the pattern was not yet complete. They returned to the backstage, where the crew was adjusting the scenery. Poirot's gaze fell on a prop table, where a small vial of lavender perfume lay, its cap loose. It matched the scent of the letter, suggesting a connection to Isabella. Had she been in Vincente's office? Or was the letter a plant to mislead him? The clues, the blood-stained glove, the brass key, the torn silk swirled in his mind, each a note in the deadly duet. As the rehearsal resumed, Vincente's baton rose, and Isabella's voice filled the hall, a haunting aria that seemed to mourn Elise's loss. But Poirot saw the glances between them, charged with unspoken words. The opera house was a stage of passion and deceit, and Vincente's role was central. Was he a lover scorned, a protector of secrets, or a pawn in a larger game? Poirot's little grey cells hummed with purpose. The duet of deception was reaching its crescendo, and he would not rest until the truth took center stage. Chapter 9. The Stolen Score. The Grand Étoile Opera House pulsed with the quiet tension of a late afternoon, its auditorium empty save for the faint echo of a violin being tuned in the orchestra pit. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit a stark contrast to the cluttered backstage, moved with the precision of a man who saw order in chaos. The murder of Elise Veron had woven a tapestry of clues, cut ropes, a blood-stained glove, a brass key, a cryptic note, and now a new thread had emerged. A rare musical score, composed for the opera's next production, The Masked Muse, had vanished from Maestro Vincente's office. Poirot's little grey cells buzzed with the certainty that this theft was no coincidence, but a note in the deadly symphony of Elise's death. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, trailed behind, his notebook filled with scribbled observations. "A stolen score, Poirot," he said, his brow furrowed. "Seems an odd thing to take. Do you think it's Spence connected to Elise Set's murder?" "Mon ami," Poirot replied, his mustache twitching with a glint of intrigue. In the opera, nothing is without purpose. A score is more than music. It is power, prestige, perhaps even a secret. Elise was entrusted with its safekeeping, I am told. Its disappearance suggests someone wished to silence more than her voice. They entered Vincente's office, a cramped space cluttered with sheet music and coffee-stained manuscripts. The desk, usually a chaos of papers, was oddly tidy, as if someone had rifled through it with care. Vincente stood by the window, his angular face pale, his hands fidgeting with his baton. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice tight, "this theft is a disaster. The Masked Muse is my masterpiece, a score unlike any other. It was here yesterday, locked in my drawer." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Locked, maestro, and yet the lock is intact. No signs of force. Who else had access to this office?" Vincente hesitated, his gaze flickering. "Only my assistant Claire and the stage manager, Lefebvre. Elise sometimes came here to study her parts. She was to sing the lead in The Masked Muse. I trusted her with the score as safekeeping." Poirot's mind seized on the detail. "Entrusted, you say? A weighty responsibility for a chorus girl. Did she speak of threats, of someone coveting this score?" Vincente shook his head, but his eyes betrayed unease. She was nervous, said she felt watched. "I thought it was her imagination. The score is valuable. Composers, rival companies, even collectors would pay dearly for it." Poirot nodded, his gaze sweeping the room. A faint scratch on the desk drawer caught his eye, barely visible but fresh, suggesting a key or tool had been used. He filed it away, alongside the brass key etched with Gaudier from the understage. Could it unlock this drawer or another secret tied to the score? Leaving the office, Poirot sought out the orchestra, gathered in the pit for a rehearsal. He approached Mademoiselle Claire, the young violinist who had overheard Vincente's argument with Elise. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her bow, her eyes red-rimmed. "Mademoiselle," Poirot began, his voice gentle but probing, "you were close to Maestro Vincente's office. Did you see anyone near it yesterday, perhaps during the performance?" Claire Fed's fingers stilled. "I saw Monsieur Lefebvre lingering by the door during the interval. He dad's not usually there. He dad's always backstage shouting at the crew. And I saw Isabella, too, leaving the office just before the final act." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Mademoiselle Moretti, in the Maestro Sip's office. Most curious. Did she carry anything?" Claire shook her head. "I couldn't see, but she looked angry, muttering to herself. She and Elise were always at odds, especially over the new production." Poirot thanked her and moved on, his mind weaving the threads: Isabella's presence, Lefebvre's unusual behavior, the missing score. He sought out Lefebvre, finding him in the wings, barking orders at a stagehand. The stage manager's sallow face tightened as Poirot approached. "Monsieur Lefebvre," Poirot said, his tone unyielding, "you were seen near Maestro Vincente's office during the performance. A rare musical score is missing. What do you know of this?" Lefebvre stayed Poirot's, quirsed in his hands. "I was checking the schedule. That sips all. I don't set go poking around in Vincente State Poirot's. If the score sip's gone, ask the performers. They set always scheming for attention. Poirot's sip's gleamed. Sickening, perhaps, but stealing. That requires motive. You were close to the understage when Elise died, were you not? And now near the scene of another crime. Coincidence, monsieur? Lefebvre's face reddened. I run this theatre, Monsieur Poirot. I set 'em everywhere. If you stir accusing me. I accuse no one, Poirot interrupted. But I observe, and Hercule Poirot misses nothing. As Lefebvre stormed off, Hastings whispered, "He Seb's rattled, Poirot. And Isabella in the office? She Seb's got motive, jealousy over Elise Seb's role in the new production." "Oui, Hastings," Poirot replied. "But motive is not proof. The score recept's theft suggests a deeper game, perhaps financial, perhaps personal. We must find it, for it may hold the key to Elise Seb's death." Poirot's gaze drifted to the orchestra pit, where a disgruntled violinist, Monsieur Renaud, was packing his instrument with a scowl. Poirot approached, noting the man's clenched jaw and calloused fingers. "Monsieur Renaud," he said, "you seem displeased. Was Mademoiselle Varro's rise in the company a source of resentment?" Renaud's eyes flashed. Elise was a chorus girl, nothing more. Vincent fawned over her, gave her parts she didn't set earn. And that score, the masked martyrs, it was meant to be our triumph, but he only cared about her. If it's Serra's gone, good riddance. Maybe now we said'll get a fair chance. Poirot nodded, filing away the violinist's bitterness. The orchestra was a microcosm of rivalries. Each member vying for recognition. Had one acted on their grudge, stealing the score to sabotage Vincente or Elise? Or was the theft a distraction, hiding a darker truth? As the rehearsal resumed, Poirot stood in the shadows, the ghost light casting an eerie glow across the stage. The missing score was no mere loss. It was a clue tied to Elise's death and the secrets of the Grande Étoile. The brass key, the torn silk, the blood-stained glove, all pointed to a conspiracy woven through the opera's heart. Poirot's little grey cells hummed with purpose. The stolen score was a melody of deceit, and he would follow its notes to the killer's final bow. Chapter 10. The Ghost Light Sept's Glow. The Grande Étoile Opera House stood silent under the cloak of midnight, its auditorium a cavern of shadows pierced only by the solitary glow of the ghost light, a single bulb left burning on the stage to ward off spirits, or so the superstition went. Hercule Poirot, his polished cane a quiet companion, stood in the wings with Captain Hastings, their breath soft in the stillness. The murder of Elise Varron had tightened the threads of suspicion around the opera house, and Poirot's investigation, fueled by clues like the cut rope, the blood-stained glove, the brass key and the stolen score, had led him to this clandestine vigil. The understage where Elise had met her end held secrets yet to be unveiled, and Poirot sensed the killer was growing restless, their presence a shadow lurking just out of sight. Hastings shivered, his eyes scanning the empty auditorium. "I don't spurt like this, Poirot," he whispered, his voice barely audible, staking out the theatre at this hour. "It sits eerie, and that ghost light doesn't sit help. Feels like we set was waiting for the phantom himself." "Mon ami?" Poirot replied, his moustache twitching with a hint of amusement. "There are no phantoms here, only men and women with motives. The ghost light illuminates the stage, but Hercule Poirot illuminates the truth. We are here to catch our killer in a moment of indiscretion." They had positioned themselves near the understage entrance, hidden by a curtain of heavy velvet. Poirot's plan was simple. Observe the understage, where the fatal prop had fallen for any sign of the culprit returning to cover their tracks. The brass key etched with Gurreau's H.O., the blood-stained glove, and the number box 12, all pointed to a secret tied to the theatre's heart, and Poirot suspected the understage was its nexus. A faint creak broke the silence, and Poirot's hand tightened on his cane. Footsteps, soft but deliberate, echoed from below. He gestured for Hastings to remain still. His grey eyes sharp in the dim light, a figure emerged from the understage staircase, moving with the caution of a thief. It was Pierre, the young stagehand. his face pale under the ghost light's glow, his hands clutching a small object, a locket glinting silver, with delicate engravings that matched Elise's hairpin. Poirot stepped forward, his voice cutting through the silence. "Monsieur Pierre, you are abroad late. What brings you to the scene of Mademoiselle Varonspit's death? And what is this locket you hold so tightly?" Pierre froze, his eyes wide with panic. "Monsieur Poirot, I was checking the rigging. The locket, it was Elise's. I found it here, near the pulley, after the gendarmes left. I thought it might mean something." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "Mean something, monsieur, or incriminate someone? You were close to Elise, were you not? She trusted you, perhaps with secrets others wished to keep buried. Show me the locket." But Pierre hesitated, then handed it over, his hands trembling. Poirot opened it with care, revealing a tiny photograph inside, a young woman strikingly similar to Elise, and a man whose features were obscured by shadow. The back bore an inscription, "E.V., forever yours." The initials matched Elise's, but the photograph suggested a deeper connection, perhaps a lover or a relative. Poirot's mind raced, recalling the cryptic note from Elise's dressing room and the stolen score. Was the locket a clue to her rendezvous, or a motive for her murder? "Why did you not give this to the gendarmes, Monsieur Pierre?" Poirot asked, his tone soft but piercing. "To hide it is to invite suspicion." Pierre's shoulders slumped. "I didn't want to get her in trouble. She was scared, Monsieur Poirot. Said someone was after her, someone powerful. She gave me the locket to keep safe, said it was proof of something dangerous. I was going to give it back, but then she was killed." Poirot finished, his eyes narrowing. "And who was this? Someone powerful of Monsieur Duval, perhaps? Or Mastro Vincento?" Pierre shook his head, his voice barely a whisper. "She wouldn't say, but she mentioned a box, something locked, hidden in the theatre. She said it could ruin everything." Poirot's moustache twitched, the brass key burning in his pocket. "A box, you say? Perhaps in box 12, or another secret place. You will tell me all, monsieur, but first we must ensure this locket is safe." As Poirot pocketed the locket, a sudden noise, a sharp snap, came from the understage. Hastings drew his revolver, his face tense. "Someone steps down there, Poirot." They descended swiftly, Poirot's cane tapping with urgency. The understage was a maze of shadows, but a faint light flickered near the fatal pulley. Poirot approached, his senses alert, and found a single candle burning, its wax dripping onto the stone floor. Beside it lay a torn scrap of sheet music, its notes matching the missing score of the Masked Muse. The candle's presence was no accident. Someone had been here, perhaps moments ago, searching or planting evidence. "Hastings," Poirot said, retrieving the scrap. "This is no coincidence. The killer returns to the scene, leaving clues or erasing them. The locket, the score, the key, they are all part of the same deadly performance." They searched the understage, but the intruder had vanished, leaving only the candle's flicker and the faint scent of lavender, Isabella's perfume, or a deliberate misdirection. Poirot's mind wove the clues together. The locket's photograph, Pierre's secrecy, the stolen score, the blood-stained glove. The killer was close, their desperation growing with each step Poirot took toward the truth. As they ascended to the auditorium, the ghost light cast its eerie glow, a silent witness to the night's discoveries. The opera house was a stage of hidden motives, its players bound by love, fear, and betrayal. Poirot's little grey cells hummed with purpose. The locket was a new note in the symphony of murder, and he would follow its melody to the killer's heart, no matter how dark the shadows grew. Chapter 11. The Gala Sept's Final Act. The Grand Étoile Opera House glittered under the Parisian night, its chandeliers casting a golden glow over the auditorium as the charity gala unfolded in a swirl of silk gowns and clinking champagne flutes. Hercule Poirot, impeccable in his evening suit, stood at the edge of the foyer, his grey eyes scanning the crowd with the precision of a conductor reading a score. The gala, a showcase of the opera's finest talents, had drawn Paris's elite, but beneath the surface of elegance, tension simmered. Elise Varron's murder hung over the event like a storm cloud, and Poirot's investigation, woven with clues like the blood-stained glove, the brass key, the stolen score, and the locket had brought him to this moment where suspects mingled under one roof. Tonight, he sensed, the killer would reveal themselves, if only through a misstep. Captain Hastings, adjusting his tie nervously, whispered, "This place is a powder keg, Poirot. Everyone serves here. Isabella, Vincente, Duval, even Pierre. One wrong move, and it could all explode." "Précisément, mon ami," Poirot replied, his moustache twitching. "In such a gathering, the masks of deception slip. Watch closely, Hastings, for the killer is among us, and Hercule Poirot will not let them dance away." The auditorium filled as the performance began, a medley of arias showcasing the company's stars. Isabella Moretti took the stage, her voice a siren's call, but her eyes darted to the private boxes where Monsieur Duval sat, his scarred face half hidden in shadow. Mastro Vincente conducted with fervor, his baton a blur, yet Poirot noted the strain in his posture, as if the weight of secrets pressed upon him. Pierre lingered in the wings, his hands fidgeting, while the stage manager, Monsieur Lefebvre, hovered nearby, his clipboard a shield against scrutiny. During a brief intermission, Poirot moved through the crowd, his ears attuned to whispered conversations. He overheard a chorus girl murmur about Duval's special interest in Elise, and a patron's hushed remark about a locked box in box 12. The brass key in Poirot's pocket seemed to pulse with significance, its gay ching a clue to a hidden truth. He approached Madame Dubois, the patroness, who stood greeting guests with practiced grace. "Madame," Poirot said, bowing, "this gala is magnificent, but I must ask about box 12. It is reserved for Monsieur Duval. Oui? And locked, I am told." Madame Dubois' smile faltered, her pearl necklace catching the light. "Box 12 is private. Hercule used by patrons for discretion. Monsieur Duval favors it. Yes, but I know nothing of locks." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Discretion is a fine word, madame, but it often cloaks secrets. Mercy for your candor." As the second half began, Isabella returned to the stage, her aria a haunting lament, but the mood shifted when she paused mid-note, her gaze fixed on Duval's box. In a moment of unscripted drama, she stepped forward, her voice cutting through the music. "This gala honors art, but it hides treachery. Monsieur Duval, you pull the strings of this opera, but at what cost? Did you silence Elise to protect your secrets?" A gasp rippled through the crowd, and Vincente's baton froze. Duval rose, his scarred face impassive, but his eyes burned. "Mademoiselle Moretti, your passion is misplaced. I am a patron, not a puppeteer. Accuse me again, and you'll regret it." The auditorium buzzed with whispers, and Poirot's mind raced. Isabella's outburst was no mere tantrum. It was a calculated strike, perhaps to deflect suspicion or provoke a reaction. He glanced at Pierre, who stood frozen in the wings, his hand clutching something beneath his coat. Lefebvre, too, seemed agitated, his eyes darting between Isabella and the understage entrance. Poirot signaled to Hastings, and they slipped backstage, where the chaos of the gala provided cover. As they neared the understage, a shadow moved, a figure darting toward the trapdoor where Poirot had found the blood-stained glove. It was Pierre, his face pale, his hands fumbling with a small package wrapped in cloth. Poirot stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Monsieur Pierre, you are busy tonight. What do you hide in that cloth, and why do you return to the scene of Elise's death?" Pierre's eyes widened, and he bolted, but Hastings, quicker than his usual demeanor suggested, tackled him to the ground. The package fell, revealing a fragment of sheet music, the missing score of the Masked Muse, its pages marked with cryptic annotations. Pierre struggled, his voice desperate. "I was protecting it. Elise gave it to me, said it was dangerous. Someone wanted it destroyed." Poirot knelt, examining the score. The annotations were in a code, A series of numbers and initials. GD, EV, box 12. Dangerous, monsieur. To whom? Monsieur Duval, perhaps, whose initials mark these pages. Before Pierre could answer, a creak sounded above, and Poirot looked up to see a sandbag teetering on a loosened rope directly above them. "Hastings!" he shouted, shoving his friend aside as the sandbag crashed to the floor, missing them by inches. Dust billowed, and Poirot coughed, his heart pounding. "Another attempt, mon ami," he said, brushing his suit. The killer grows bold, but careless. Hastings, shaken, helped Pierre to his feet. "Who loosened that rope, Pierre? You were here. Did you see anyone?" Pierre Spur's voice trembled. "I saw Lefebvre near the rigging earlier, muttering about the score. He Sabs always hated Vincent Espar's new production, said it would ruin the opera." Poirot's moustache twitched. Lefebvre, Duval, Isabella, all dance to their own motives, but the steps converge. This score. Pierre, what did Elise say of it? "She said it held a secret," Pierre whispered. "Something that could ruin someone powerful. She was going to confront them that night, in box 12. Poirot's eyes gleamed, the pieces falling into place. The gala continued above, its music a facade for the deadly drama below. The score, the key, the locket, all pointed to box 12, a locked sanctuary of secrets. As Poirot and Hastings returned to the auditorium, the ghost light flickered, casting long shadows. The killer was among the glittering crowd, their desperation palpable. Poirot's little grey cells hummed with purpose. The gala's final act was near, and he would ensure the curtain fell on the truth. Chapter 12. Beneath the chandelier septs fall. The Grand Étoile Opera House, bathed in the soft glow of its chandeliers, seemed to hold its breath as Hercule Poirot stood in the auditorium's upper tier, his sharp grey eyes fixed on the magnificent crystal fixture above the stage. The charity gala had ended, but the echoes of Isabella Moretti's accusation against Monsieur Duval lingered, a discordant note in the evening's performance. Poirot's investigation into Elise Varro's murder had woven a tapestry of clues: cut ropes, a blood-stained glove, a brass key, a stolen score, and a locket, each pointing to a conspiracy rooted in the opera's heart. Now his little grey cells hummed with the certainty that the chandelier, like the prop that killed Elise, held a secret. Its cables, glinting in the dim light, bore faint scratches, suggesting tampering, and Poirot suspected a second act of sabotage was imminent. Captain Hastings, his face etched with concern, stood beside him, peering up at the chandelier. "I say, Poirot, you think someone sits planning another d'accident set? That thing sets a monster. If it falls, it set'll crush half the auditorium." "Précisément, mon ami," Poirot replied, his moustache twitching. "The chandelier is a stage for murder, just as the understage was for Elise. The killer grows desperate, and their desperation reveals them. Observe the cables tampered, like the prop, and the key, marked G.A., may unlock the truth." Poirot's gaze shifted to box 12, the private box reserved for Duval, its door locked tight. The brass key, found in the understage, burned in his pocket, its key itching a match to the opera's initials. He suspected it opened the box, perhaps concealing the locked box Elise had mentioned to Pierre, with Hastings in tow. Poirot ascended to the box, his cane tapping softly. The lock clicked open with a satisfying turn, revealing a plush interior, its walls lined with crimson velvet. A small safe, hidden beneath a velvet curtain, bore the same G.E.A. initials. The key fit perfectly, and inside, Poirot found a velvet pouch containing a sapphire brooch, the missing jewel from Claire Moreau's death a decade ago, its facets glinting with a cursed allure. "Hastings," Poirot said, holding up the brooch. "This is the jewel of the 1915 scandal, tied to Claire Sepp's death and Beaumont Sepp's disgrace. Elise must have discovered it, perhaps threatening to expose its keeper." Hastings Sepp's eyes widened. "Duval, he Sepp's got the wealth to hide such a thing, and those payments in the ledger marked the G.D. Sepp's could be hush money." "Possible," Poirot mused. "But we must not leap to conclusions. The brooch, the score, the locket. They form a melody of greed and revenge. Let us confront the one who knows the understage best. They descended to the backstage where Pierre, the stagehand, was adjusting a trapdoor, his hands trembling. Poirot's voice cut through the silence. Monsieur Pierre, you have withheld much, but the time for secrets is over. This brooch found in box 12 was Elise's secret, was it not? She entrusted you with her fears, her knowledge of a past crime. Pierre's face paled, his eyes darting to the chandelier above. She found it, Monsieur Poirot, in Duval's safe. She said it was proof of something terrible. Money stolen from the opera, hidden by Beaumont and Duval. She was going to confront him that night, in box 12. I begged her not to, but she wouldn't listen. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And you, monsieur, kept her locket to protect her memory, or to protect yourself. The score you hid, marked with Duval Sept's initials, was it part of this secret? Pierre's voice broke. She gave me the score to hide. It had notes, codes about the brooch, the money. I didn't know what to do. I loved her, monsieur, but I was scared. Someone else knew. She wasn't set alone that night. Before Poirot could press further, a metallic groan echoed above. The chandelier swayed, its cables straining, and a shadow moved in the rigging, a cloaked figure, knife in hand, slicing at the ropes. "Hastings!" Poirot shouted, shoving Pierre aside, as a cable snapped, sending a shower of crystal shards to the stage below. The figure vanished into the shadows, but Poirot's keen eyes caught a glimpse of a scarred hand, Duval's scar. "Hastings, alert Madame Dubois," Poirot commanded, his heart racing. "The killer seeks to silence us all, but they have made their mistake." As Hastings ran for help, Poirot pursued the figure, his cane tapping rapidly through the backstage corridors. He reached the understage, where the air was thick with dust from the near disaster. A discarded knife lay near the pulley, its blade matching the cuts on the chandelier's cables, and Elise's prop. Nearby, a torn scrap of fabric, crimson silk, like Isabella's gown, caught his eye. Was it a plant or a genuine clue? Duval appeared, his face a mask of calm, but his scar was livid in the gaslight. "Monsieur Poirot, this is madness. You chase phantoms while the opera suffers." "No phantoms, Monsieur Duval," Poirot said, holding up the brooch. "This jewel, hidden in your safe, ties you to Claire Moreau-Seb's death and Elisa Seb's. You paid her to keep silent, but she threatened to sing, did she not?" Duval's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, Madame Dubois and the gendarmes arrived, summoned by Hastings. Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the final notes. The brooch, a symbol of past theft. The score, coded with evidence. The locket, a lover's keepsake. Pierre's confession had revealed Elise's intent, but Duval's scar and the cloaked figure's knife pointed to a deeper truth. The chandelier's near fall was no accident, but a desperate act to bury the past. As the gendarmes secured the scene, Poirot's little grey cells hummed with purpose. The killer was cornered. Their motives laid bare: greed, betrayal, and a legacy of crime. The opera house's shadows were parting, and the final act was near. Chapter 13. The Final Bow. The auditorium of the Grand Étoile Opera House was a cathedral of silence, its velvet seats empty save for the gathered suspects, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the ghost light. Hercule Poirot stood center stage, his small frame commanding the vast space, his polished cane a scepter of truth. The murder of Elise Varron had woven a tapestry of clues: cut ropes, a blood-stained glove, a brass key, a stolen score, a sapphire brooch, and a locket, each a note in a symphony of deceit. Now, with the cast and crew assembled before him, Poirot prepared to conduct the final act, revealing the killer whose desperation had nearly brought the chandelier crashing down. Captain Hastings stood by the wings, his notebook clutched tightly, his eyes darting between the suspects. Isabella Moretti, her crimson gown a blaze of defiance. Maestro Vincente, his angular face taut with unease. Monsieur Duval, his scarred visage, a mask of calm. Pierre, the stagehand, his hands trembling, and Monsieur Lefebvre, the stage manager, his clipboard a futile shield. Madame Dubois, the patroness, sat in the front row, her pearl necklace glinting with nervous anticipation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Poirot began, his voice clear and resonant, "Hercule Poirot has promised to bring order to the chaos of this tragedy. Mademoiselle Elise Verot was not killed by accident, but by a hand guided by greed, jealousy, and a secret buried in the opera's past. Tonight, the curtain falls on the killer." He paced the stage, his grey eyes piercing. "Let us reconstruct the score of this crime. Elise, a rising star, was crushed beneath a prop, its rope cut with precision. A blood-stained glove, a brass key marked Whodunit, a torn scrap of silk, a stolen score, a locket, and a sapphire brooch. These are the notes of murder. But the melody began 10 years ago, with the death of Claire Moreau, killed by a falling chandelier, and a missing jewel tied to a scandal." Poirot turned to Duval. "Monsieur Duval, your wealth revived this opera, but it also hid a truth. The sapphire brooch, stolen from Claire, was found in your safe in box 12, opened by this key." He held up the brass key, its Derry A etching gleaming. "You paid Elise to keep silent about your past, money stolen from the opera, laundered through your patronage. She discovered the brooch and the coded score of the masked muse, which detailed your crimes." Duval's scar twitched, but he remained silent. Poirot continued, facing Isabella. "Mademoiselle Moretti, your jealousy of Elise was no secret. She threatened your place as the star, and your love for Mastro Vincente." He produced the lavender-scented love letter. "This from Vincente to you confirms your bond, but Elise's rise and her affair with him stoked your rage." Isabella Sept's eyes flashed. "I loved him, yes, but I didn't kill her." Poirot raised a hand. "Patience, mademoiselle. The truth requires all voices." He turned to Vincente. "Mastro, you argued with Elise during the interval, as Mademoiselle Claire overheard. She threatened to expose a secret. Perhaps your knowledge of Duval's crimes, or your own indiscretions, you could not risk her voice being heard." Vincente's baton trembled. "I loved her talent, nothing more. I was on the podium when she died." "Indeed," Poirot said. "But the crime was set before the final act." He faced Pierre. "Monsieur Pierre, you loved Elise, protected her locket and the score. She confided in you about the brooch, the box in box 12. You hid evidence, fearing for her memory or your own guilt." Pierre Steck's voice broke. "I only wanted to protect her." Poirot's gaze shifted to Lefebvre. "And you, Monsieur Lefebvre, resented Vincent Stevre's new production, Elisette's Rise. You were seen near the understage, near Vincent Stevre's office. Did you cut the rope to sabotage the opera or to silence Elise?" Lefebvre's face reddened. "I run this theatre. I don't skulk in shadows." Poirot's moustache twitched, his eyes gleaming. "Yet someone did. The killer cut the prop's rope, planted the glove to implicate a man, and stole the score to hide its coded truth. They returned to the understage, leaving a candle and a scrap of music, and tampered with the chandelier to silence me. But they made a mistake." He held up the torn crimson silk. "This, found near the chandelier's rigging, matches Mademoiselle Moretti's gown. But it is a plant, oui? For Isabella was on stage when the chandelier swayed. The true killer is one who knows the understage, who moves unseen, who bears a scar not only of the body but of the soul." Poirot turned to Duval, his voice rising. "Monsieur Duval, you are the conductor of this crime. You killed Claire Moreau 10 years ago, stealing her brooch to fund your schemes. When Elise uncovered your past, you paid her to stay silent, but she planned to expose you in box 12. You lured her to the understage with a note, cut the prop's rope and crushed her. You planted the glove to implicate Vincente, stole the score to hide its codes, and tried to kill me with the chandelier when I grew close. Your scar, seen in the rigging, betrays you." Duval's composure cracked, his hand reaching for a concealed blade, but the gendarmes, summoned by Hastings, seized him. "You have no proof," Duval snarled. Poirot smiled. "The brooch, the key, The score, Sept's codes, Pierre, Sept's testimony. They are proof enough. Your greed and fear composed this murder, but Hercule Poirot has read your score. As Duval was led away, the auditorium exhaled. The suspects' faces a mix of relief and shock. Isabella wept. Vincente slumped. Pierre clutched the locket, and Madame Dubois rose, her voice steady. Hercule, you have saved the Grande Étoile. Poirot bowed. The stage is clear, madame. Let the opera sing again. As the crowd dispersed, the ghost light glowed, a beacon of truth in the shadows. The Grande Étoile would rise from its darkness, its secrets unveiled by Poirot's little grey cells. The final bow was his, and the curtain fell on justice.